This video is sponsored by Surfshark. More on them later.
Hi friends! Video games were a mistake. Trust me. Yeah, I know they do a lot of good in the world, and more often than not they're a lot of fun to play, but the longer you spend behind the scenes looking at the more corporate side of things, the more you get the overwhelming sense that all of this needs to stop right now. Like right now.
There are few more sobering aspects to growing up than realizing that the companies who make your favorite video games have some terrifying skeletons in their closets. As much as you can try to divorce the games you play from the giant companies responsible for it, it can be extremely hard to separate the joy you feel from playing them from the absolute misery associated with so many developers and publishers in the industry today. Handily, since I'm taking a little break from ranking stuff, I'm well placed to make this video because, and I don't know about you, this doesn't feel like the sort of topic that I should be ranking. Like, I'm comparing one real-life terrible thing that has negatively affected dozens, if not hundreds of lives, to another almost equally terrible thing. I shouldn't be saying which one is worse. I'd rather not be in a lose-lose situation like that. It's a crazy old world out there without me trying to rank its atrocities, and when you consider how interconnected it all is and how many people try to take advantage of this, basically you gotta look after your internet security. Thanks to today's sponsor Surfshark, this is now a piece of cake. VPNs like Surfshark let you connect to servers across the globe, with Surfshark in particular having over 3,000 servers spread across 65 countries, so you can access international streaming libraries and can watch exclusive shows on, say, Japanese Netflix. Damn, that's a lot of anime! Plus, it's worth mentioning that there's some more serious applications, since online security is more important than ever these days, and Surfshark can help secure your data with industry-leading measures by using impenetrable encryption and the best VPN protocols around. So you can join public Wi-Fi and watch more of my videos safe in the knowledge that your personal data is being kept nice and safe. Surfshark is super easy to install and can run on unlimited devices from a single subscription, so you can safely do all your interneting on a massive number of different platforms, and with a 30-day money-back guarantee and 24/7 live customer support, that's a lot of good news. You can go to surfshark.deals/RabbidLuigi and enter the promo code RabbidLuigi for 83% off and 3 extra months for free. That link is also in this video's description if you don't fancy typing all of that out. Secure your connection now with Surfshark.
Alrighty then, it's time for the worst of the worst.
Considering the nature of this video, it's probably a good idea for me to underarm it to start with. Again, this video isn't ranked in the slightest, but considering where this video is going, it might be a decent idea to start somewhere that isn't as terrible as where we're headed. Not sure how we've managed to manufacture a scenario where Bethesda can be seen as not so bad, but hey, we've managed it. It actually wasn't that long ago that you wouldn't turn too many heads if you said that Bethesda were your favorite games company, since their highlights reel was pretty damn impressive, with the Elder Scrolls and Fallout franchises doing wonders for their public image. Unfortunately, over time, cracks have started to form, and as Bethesda made more of these games, it became obvious that the faults present in earlier games weren't anomalies and were actually part of a very slapdash design philosophy that boiled over into the game that eroded through Bethesda's goodwill like a powerful acid. Fallout 76. I can't say that one game on its own has turned around how people feel about a game studio, but it is a little insane how a good chunk of the negative press surrounding Bethesda can be traced back to this stupid video game. Fallout 76 itself was hot, unfinished garbage on release day and has only improved marginally in the succeeding years, but it's more the events surrounding it that have slowly turned the tide against Bethesda. I say slowly, but it's kind of amazing how quickly one game swayed public opinion, and Bethesda's handling of Fallout 76's shortcomings is a masterclass in why you hire the best PR you can afford. As soon as they started promising pre-order bonuses that they didn't follow through on, and then stated that we aren't planning on doing anything about it, and then refused to issue refunds for Fallout 76, and then accidentally doxing everyone who went through their support website, and then they made Fallout 76 worse by restricting the amount of ammo in the game so that you have to go hang out on their microtransaction store. As soon as all of this happened in a surprisingly short space of time, it kind of ruined Bethesda for a lot of people. Before, you could appreciate how easy it was to lose yourself in their games and do your best to ignore the technical faults, but when the game is bad and fundamentally broken from start to finish, there's nothing to distract you from just how busted Bethesda are as a company. They know that the last universally acclaimed game they made was Skyrim. That's why it keeps getting re-released on any and all consoles and platforms that will have it. You don't have to worry about glitches if you're merely porting games over to another oh shit, never mind. Anyway, that was a nice warm-up, but now I think it's time to talk about EA. Sorry, but I've picked the topic now, and you can't talk about terrible things that have happened and continue to happen in the video game industry without spending a decent amount of time talking about the chief architect. The impressive part, if you could call it that, is how consistent EA have been over the years, since the rapid growth they experienced in the 2000s led them to get a taste for success and do every bad thing in the 2010s to keep it going. Even in the 2000s, EA garnered a reputation for closing studios and came under fire in 2004 when they closed down Origin Systems, the guys behind the Ultima games, due to recent titles selling badly. EA would go on to say in 2008 that this practice was wrong and that they'd do better in the future. Failing to remember this when they closed down Playfish, Phenomic Game Development, Black Box Games, Victory Games, Mythic Entertainment, DreamWorks Interactive, EA Salt Lake, Maxis Software, Visceral Games, and Pandemic Studios. 2008, incidentally, the last time that EA took accountability for anything ever again. We should talk about EA's greatest achievement before we go any further, shouldn't we? I know they've made a lot of games, a lot of them very similar, and a large handful riddled with microtransactions, but the fact that they won consumerist coveted Worst Company in America award twice in a row, a feat no company has ever managed, tells you everything that you could possibly want to know about EA. They got the ball rolling in 2012 off the back of Mass Effect 3's crappy ending, and continued this momentum into 2013 by fucking up the launch of SimCity and filling Dead Space 3 with microtransactions. That's the common trend with EA. They gain notoriety by screwing up a fairly simple game concept that should have easily brought in loads of money, but instead it just reminds everyone how this company operates. The straw split the camel's back in two when 2017 rolled around, and Star Wars Battlefront 2 was a shell of the game that it should have been, and deliberately gated behind loot boxes and microtransactions, which ruffled so many feathers that governments got involved with lawsuits as it suddenly became obvious that loot boxes are merely a way of promoting gambling to children. Fucking stop this shit! By the way, this wasn't EA's first lawsuit, since they got into a lot of trouble in the mid-2000s when the working conditions for their staff went public and people took exception to 100-hour work weeks for some reason. Sadly, as we'll come to find throughout this video, this is far from an isolated incident. Look, I'm not saying that EA are still the worst company in America, but all I know is that when they used to invite me to play their games at Gamescom, the pasta they served there tasted really weird, and honestly, what else are you even looking for? Although I gotta say, when I've been to Ubisoft events, they didn't even have any pasta, so clearly it's time for Satan to retire and for Mr. Ubisoft to take his throne atop a mound of broken minds and souls. Ubisoft are a little more sly with their shittiness, never quite grabbing the headlines like EA does so frequently, and instead doing everything in their power to lazily churn their latest release through the conveyor belt and into our sweaty mouths. They're mostly inoffensive, but so severely bland that it becomes really hard staying interested in them long enough to be angry about it. Although they've absolutely had some stinkers, let's not start pretending that they haven't. Assassin's Creed Unity was released in a horribly buggy state with the missing faces a particular lowlight, and since Ubisoft had a review embargo on the game until 12 hours after the game was released, it seemed like Ubisoft knew exactly how broken Unity was. They've also made some horrifyingly bad Kinect fighting games, and that will always blot your copybook in my eyes. Over the last decade or so, their biggest franchises have homogenized into one giant grey blob of copy-paste open-world design that has done some serious damage to how people see the genre. Like, there's some people out there who think that all open-world games are this tedious and uninspiring just because they played a few Ubisoft games where you need to climb to the tower to unlock the map. How Breath of the Wild made this work, I'll never know. Ubisoft's holding pattern concerns me because I get the sense that they're a very risk-adverse company, but one that also isn't afraid to downgrade a game to save dev time. They've got this nasty little habit of portraying a new game with some spectacular next-gen trailer that shows just how detailed all the new gameplay elements are with an absurd attention to detail, only to turn the dial down and release a comparatively subpar video game with barely a passing resemblance to what was shown off previously. This probably wouldn't be much of an issue if it only happened with, say, just Watch Dogs, but Kroby Cat made a whole video about this and it honestly just depresses me. It's also like false advertising, so, you know, get on that, lawyers. This, along with their yearly release schedule that throws aggressively mediocre games into the world, and you wonder what kind of games Ubisoft would be capable of making if they spent a little more time and effort making them. Far Cry 3 was nearly 10 years ago, and I can't say with any confidence that Ubisoft have topped or even matched that game for quality in that time. And fuck, do you know how many games they've made in 10 years? Factor into this that Ubisoft have also faced allegations of brutal work hours for their employees and a lot of their games having crunch time as part of their dev cycle, and it's kind of the worst case scenario. Like, you're destroying your workforce and having very little to show for it. Hire better managers, for the love of God. Among all these more recent controversies, it can be very easy to forget about some of the developers and publishers that maybe aren't as spectacularly shitty these days, but definitely have some metaphorical blood on their hands from previous controversies. They may be harder to call out for their bad practices if they've dropped off the radar, because perhaps the fact that we don't have 20 Kotaku articles about them a year is a sign that they've changed their ways, but Konami left enough scorched earth behind them from their escapades in the mid to late 2010s to still be riding a wave of hatred even now. Or maybe I'm just sore because Konami being a bag of dicks means that I can't enjoy any new Metal Gear games that get made, if they even get made at all, because the talented people, yeah, they fucked off as fast as their legs could carry them, and I do not blame them in the slightest. I have a personal hatred of Konami after what happened with Hideo Kojima, and while we may never know the entire story, the rift between Kojima and Konami became so public and so childish that it became easy to side with Kojima, as Konami started to sidestep communication with his dev team and would eventually distance Metal Gear Solid 5 from its creator. With Kojima leaving in December 2015, but Konami retaining the rights to Metal Gear, it left the series in limbo. Though, only a little while, as Konami brought out Metal Gear Survive not long after, a soulless zombie survival game devoid of life or an ounce of creativity, where you need to pay real money for extra save slots. Yeah, the reoccurring theme with Konami is that they seem to be done trying to create new video games to any kind of decent standard. Their biggest franchises like Castlevania and Contra have long since been pushed to the side, with Castlevania in particular finding new life as a pachinko machine and a Netflix series, but mostly as fucking gambling again. Can we stop doing this? However, the biggest injustice here also relates back to Kojima, because Silent Hill has provided some of Konami's biggest highlights over the years, and having tasked Kojima with bringing the best out of Silent Hill again, the playable teaser for a future Silent Hill game took the world by storm. Easily one of the best horror games I've played, and I can still close my eyes and remember those scares vividly. But with Kojima and Konami fighting over which consonant is better, Silent Hill has never progressed beyond being a playable teaser and was actually taken down from the PlayStation Store in early 2015. It feels weird to look back on all of this since Konami have been relatively quiet of late, but it's not like they've kept their heads down to avoid controversy, they've simply stepped away from game production to focus on gambling. With how Metal Gear Survive went down, this might be for the best. And yeah, well, there's only one place we can go now. Actually, no, I think we should spend a little bit of time on a studio that just slipped out of contention but still has some major issues. Nintendo was so close to being on here for doing virtually everything in their power to make people hate them, despite releasing games that are generally well received. For as good as the games are, Nintendo haven't really worked out the best way to approach fan-made creations, and have taken extreme measures with music preservation, fan games, and even fighting game tournaments. I understand being protective of your intellectual property, and Nintendo are legally allowed to do this, but it does come off as spiteful and does little to endear them to the public. You know, if you're gonna take all these things down, how about you fucking do this yourself? Put some music on Spotify, it's really easy to do that. But as the company who has done the least recently to endear themselves to the public, it is sadly time to talk about Activision Blizzard, who may have had one of the worst 2021s of any company in the world, but that's only because their toxic practices have been going on a lot longer than that. We'll start with the easiest stuff, because Activision have been a stain on the video game industry for a while now, with their insistence that every year needs a Call of Duty game released in it, and after a while it has started to have the same problems as Ubisoft are having. This much of a very similar style of game only brings back vastly diminishing returns. And if dropping a loot box on Normandy Beach wasn't a clear enough indication of what these guys are like, there's an alarming focus on profitability over the quality of the games being made, and naturally, their newer games are full of microtransactions. Oh yeah, and they want to put NFTs in games as soon as possible, so yeah. Scammers do like the scams, yo! As you are no doubt aware of at this point, ActiBliz hit the headlines last year when a 2-year investigation into their workplace practices and culture determined that the whole place needs nuking from orbit. Since we can't do that without people asking questions, let's just slap ActiBliz with a chunky lawsuit and demand they change their ways. And to some extent, they have, but they've also taken steps to silence their current employees from speaking out about their own experiences as a twisted method of damage control, and in the wake of employee walkouts and attempts to unionize, ActiBliz actively sought to disrupt employees banding together by hiring union busters. Oh yeah, these guys aren't guilty at all. What was the name of that hotel room they had where they used to take female employees back with alcohol and kiss and harass them? Oh yeah, it's the Cosby Suite. You know you guys are fucking disgusting, right? All throughout this, ActiBliz has stuck behind their CEO, lizard man pretending to be human Bobby Kotick, despite a report being published by the Wall Street Journal claiming that Kotick knew about all the abuse and harassment that employees were facing on a daily basis for years. It's one controversy after another with ActiBliz, and now they've been bought by Microsoft, there's a danger of it all being swept under the rug now they're under new management. I suppose it's for clean transition that the higher-ups would have wanted, but it's a little concerning how it seems like the main culprits are going to get away without any major repercussions. Well, guess there's one more reason to not give a shit about Overwatch 2. So yeah, that's about as many shitty game studios as I can stomach in one day. It's all a bit up in the air anyway, and in 5 years' time, who's to say who will be public enemy #1 in the games industry? But all I can do is keep highlighting them when developers and publishers do terrible things, and sticking them all in one video for your viewing convenience. I consider myself somewhat of an optimist, but while I'd love to say that studios won't continue to exploit their employees, reality and, you know, decades worth of history tells me that we're going to be dealing with this for a long time to come. If anything, this stuff ending up on the internet makes it more accessible, and hopefully the general public will become more aware of how their video games are made. Yes, this video is one giant metaphor for making sausages. Always has been.
Game studios are so universally terrible that this can be a very difficult industry to stomach sometimes, but then I'm reminded of how incredible some of these games are, and I pray for a day when we can make these amazing games without torturing the employees in the process. Is that so much to ask for? This is RabbidLuigi, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure you like, subscribe for more in the future, and if you want a video to watch right now, there's a video here about video game challenges and how hard we can make them. I also want to thank my top supporters on Patreon, including the Green Scorpion, Sarah Mallion, and Devon Hutt. Thank you for watching, and hold abusers accountable.